Today we will have the second of the series of 14 webinars that the STEAME Academy project is producing. And these webinars will be made or attached to the modules that will be established on the special platform for the training of STEAM teachers. Today's webinar has the title of Management of the STEAM Learning Space Environment. And this webinar is going to be delivered by Dr. Silvia Alcaraz-Dominguez, who is a full-time lecturer in the Department of Didactics and Educational Organization at the Faculty of Education of the University of Barcelona in Spain. I think Silvia can say a few more words for herself. Silvia, you can switch on your camera. Welcome. Thank you for delivering this. And you can switch on your microphone and you can speak or share your screen, and you're ready to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen. So hopefully everybody can now see my screen, which is the main slide for this presentation. So yeah, my name is Silvia Alcaraz-Dominguez. As I was introduced, I'm a full-time lecturer and researcher at the University of Barcelona Faculty of Education. My research interests have been around anything that has to do with educational innovation, especially from the point of view of teachers. So how do teachers design innovations to improve their teaching and learning of their students? How these innovations sit with them and with their students, with the schools also? And well, what can we do to make these innovations succeed and make them sustainable also? So these innovations that I've worked with are mostly related to technology, technology enhanced learning, e-learning, and the areas of the curriculum that I've worked with these teachers are mostly science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and also not only those, but lately in a more integrated manner. I've worked also with the arts, so working into the STEAM field, and lately with the STEAME field, right, which adds the E for entrepreneurship into this way of integrated teaching and learning. The title of this webinar is the management of the STEAM learning space or the learning environment. And as it was advertised, the objective of this webinar is to help you use learning environments, in particular those that are mediated by technologies, use those environments to their full potential. So my idea is that you as participants in this webinar can develop your own criteria when using and designing and using a virtual learning environments to support interdisciplinary projects. So this webinar will last around 60 minutes. I think you've already been told this. So including my presentation and then some activities and some discussion. Yes, so this webinar is part of a series of webinars, and at the end of this session, I'll be sharing the link to the upcoming webinars and those that have already been delivered, so that you can go there and check the already performed webinars, and you can join maybe in the next ones. So if you attended the previous webinar about learning spaces, it would be great because we're building on that. But if you did not, that's fine also. Don't worry. I think you can learn something still today with us. So to achieve this goal, I have planned to go through the following contents. First, I will talk about virtual learning environments, the concept of virtual learning environment. And then we will move on to introducing another concept, which is very similar, very related, which is learning management systems, LMS. And once we have covered those two subjects, we will move on to different ways to organize the STEAME learning environment using learning management systems. Three different ways that I suggest to organize these environments. Then after that, we will have an activity in small groups with breakout rooms. And then we will come back to the main room for closing and hopefully engage in some discussion and hear your questions, which would be great. So let's start with the first point. What is a virtual learning environment? Well, if you are teachers, if you work in a school or in a university, or you are doing lessons, you are teaching, you will be familiar with the physical learning environment, right? Which is, I don't know, you can think about it, it's your classroom, or maybe other spaces that we have seen in this project that they can be included also as part of the physical learning environment, another school or somewhere in the community. Well, we also have virtual learning environments, which is defined as a learning environment with no physical location, and in which the instructors and students are separated by space. So the difference between the physical learning environment and the virtual learning environment is that students and teachers do not share a physical space, but they meet online. They meet in a digital world. This approach to learning, and this resource or this way of learning has been around for a long time in the field of e-learning, of course, but also in physical learning, in face-to-face presential teaching and learning environments, and also in new modalities of teaching, which we call blended or hybrid learning. So this approach is backed up by scientific evidence and research and theory on the field of ICT in learning, ICT in education. In this figure, you can see representation of the act of learning and how ICT, how technologies can enhance and support different learning processes. Here we have the learning process displayed in three main actors, which is the teacher, obviously, and the students, and then we have the content. And we can see in this figure that ICT acts as a mediator between those elements. So, for example, we can see that students and teachers can interact, can engage in a joint activity through technology, in this case supported by a virtual learning environment. Similarly, students can engage, for example, with the content in a virtual learning environment, which is an activity mediated also by technologies. Last, I want to draw your attention to the arrow, the gray arrow, the one that is next to students, because in this framework, we can see that the ICT technology can also support and mediate interactions between students themselves, between student to student, or between groups of students. And so we will see in this webinar how we can do that through virtual learning environments. This is what we call joint activities mediated by technologies. Now, if we want to use virtual learning environments in our practice, which we can, even if we are teaching in a school that uses face-to-face teaching, or even if we are working in an educational level where students need to be in class, we can use virtual learning environments, but we need to follow, of course, some pedagogical guidelines. There will be a few pedagogical guidelines, but the first one, well, all of them respond to one main guideline, which is the consistency with the school's educational approach. So when we want to use virtual learning environments to support STEAMy projects or any project that we do in our classroom, we need to do it in a way that is consistent with the educational approach that is followed in the school. So for example, aspects such as the grouping of the students or the teaching and learning methods or the type of tasks that we ask our students to do, or our approach to assessment, all these aspects, even if they are done in a virtual learning environment, they need to be consistent with how things are done in the institution where we work. And why is that? Well, because, for example, things such as the teaching and learning methods that we use have implications in how the virtual learning environment will be. For example, if we are using project-based learning or challenge-based learning or service learning, these type of activities mean that students need to interact with each other. They need to cooperate. Therefore, in the virtual learning environment that we design and we use, there should be spaces then for students to collaborate, to cooperate. Maybe we will need to have a space for debate, discussion, for working together in a shared document, etc. So following this main pedagogical guideline, which is the consistency with the school educational approach, we may look at different aspects. We may take into account different aspects to make our virtual learning environment into a successful one for our training needs, for our teaching needs. The first area is on the left and would be how the virtual learning environment is organized. And I will talk about that a little more in a while. And then we have also the concept of universal learning design, which is a concept that can help us to design a very nice and effective virtual learning environment. So as per the virtual learning environment organization, the first question we need to ask ourselves, and I'll be coming to that later again, is how we organize the virtual learning environments in our school or in our class. So there are different ways to do so. We can we can create different virtual learning environments according to different criteria. So one of them could be by grades. So all students from first grade will have a shared, a similar virtual learning environment where they can, work with content or with a teacher or with other students, mediated by technology. Another way to organize a virtual learning environment could be by subjects. So for English or for maths or for any other subject, we have a virtual learning environment, and students go into that virtual learning environment whenever they are working on this subject or when the teacher of this subject is in class. Or other ways would be by departments. This would be a little more meso structure, where we have the Department of Science, and then we have all the classes that have to do with science. They are in this virtual learning environment. And then we have the language department. So all of the virtual learning environment, all the language teachers have this virtual learning environment to interact with the students. So no, there's no right or wrong way. It's just a matter for you to think about, and of course, like I said, be consistent with how the school wants to organize these environments. The second aspect that pedagogically is very important to have a successful virtual learning environment that supports the development of STEAMy projects is a universal learning design. You may be familiar with this concept. This is a model that provides a reference framework to create learning contexts where there are multiple ways to engage, to represent information, and to act and express yourself. This is from the point of view of students. So I will go very quickly through these principles so that you understand how to apply those principles in the case of virtual learning environments. So in terms of engagement, we want that our virtual learning environment ignites students' interest. So for that, to achieve this goal, we can use, for example, gamification, or we can use little challenges. We don't want just that our virtual learning environment is a collection of files or documents. We need to, ignite students' interest to work on this environment. Another one is to maintain the effort and the persistence. This is to maintain students' effort and persistence in this technological environment. To that goal, to maintain this effort, we can propose collaborative activities with short-term goals for our students to complete in this environment. And then we need to make sure that students can self-regulate their learning in this environment. And to do so with the principles of universal learning design, a good strategy is to state what is expected by students and how they will be assessed. Then, in terms of representation, how the student is represented in this environment, we can look at three aspects again. First one is perception, and this aspect has to do with presenting the information in multiple formats so that students with different capabilities and learning styles can find the one that is better for them. Another one is to take into account language and symbols. We need to make sure that students know very well the language and the symbols, if any, that are being used in this environment, because they might be working on their own at some point on this environment. And last, in this second point of representation, we want to facilitate understanding. And for that purpose, it is very important that in our virtual learning environment, we clarify the key contents that are there, because sometimes there might be many things in there, and we want to make sure students know what is essential. In point 3, that has to do with action and expression, how students engage or take action in this environment. We need to look first at the physical action, and in this regard, we need to use intuitive and accessible technological tools for our virtual learning environment. And I will go into that later, in more depth into that later. Next, we need to take care of expression and communication, of the diversity of ways that one can express themselves and communicate in these environments. So in this regard, we need to allow students to deliver the tasks in this environment in different formats, the same way that we presented the information in different formats. And last, we need to consider executive functions. And by this, universal learning design means that we clearly make a clear sequence of the learning process so that students can execute all those functions. Now, moving on to the second point of the index that I presented, we are going to talk about learning management systems. And you'll be wondering why we're talking about learning management system. What is that? Well, these are tools that, they're software tools or web-based applications that support the creation of a virtual learning environment, right? We don't create a virtual learning environment out of nothing in the air. We need a tool. So in this screen, you can see four tools that are available to everyone to use and set up a virtual learning environment. So first one is Google Classroom. You may be familiar with it. You can go to the website and create a virtual learning environment with Google Classroom right now. My students do it all the time. You have also Moodle. Moodle is probably one of the most well-known and ancient or old tools of learning management systems, and it's an open source software that you can install in your server, and then you can have courses in there, virtual learning environments there. Now, at the bottom left side, I've added Canvas, which is another learning management system tool that is in appearance very similar to Moodle, but it's from a different company, and well, it is apparently also free to use. And at the bottom right, you can see this tool called Class Dojo. And that is also a free tool for teachers and students to meet online and have a virtual learning environment, have a virtual classroom where they can have their own avatars, they can have points. This one is more oriented to gamification. Out of those four, this would be the one that is more appropriate maybe for primary education or maybe secondary school. Now, the learning management systems can have different appearances or different ways. We can have a synchronous learning management systems. This means that the students and teachers are in the environment at the same time. Even though they're in different places, or even in the same classroom, they access the system at the same time. This is called a synchronous way of doing that. We have also asynchronous modality, which is where we put the content there as teachers. We put the content, we put the activities in the environment, and then students access them regardless of whether we are there at that other students. Not everyone needs to be online at the same time in an asynchronous learning management system scheme. And then we have the third way, which is a mix of both synchronous and asynchronous activities. So we may ask our students to go in the virtual learning environment at the same time and with us, maybe even in the classroom, like I said, or at home. And for one activity, and for another activity, we can say, well, now when you go and read this document or fill in this questionnaire that is placed in the virtual learning environment, do it before this day. Then it's an asynchronous scheme. So the common features of the learning management systems are, first of all, the areas of information deposit for learners' engagement. What does this mean? This means that we can put there all sorts of files that we consider are useful for developing our project. So it could be readings, it could be videos, it could be a link to an external website, anything that we might consider useful. And the other type of feature is what we call instructional tools. So these are different than just files because they involve some sort of interaction between students and the learning management system. So for example, we have a function in all the tools that I presented, more or less, we have the same. We have a function for students to submit their assignments. So if we are asking students to fill in this worksheet for our project as a first activity, then we can submit it. They can submit it, sorry, through the virtual learning environment, and we are not using paper. We don't need to grade out those in paper. We have them digitally. Then we have evaluation areas. These are very interesting because we can evaluate students' work, students' submissions, but we can also set up peer evaluation activities where students are assigned other students' assignments to check to what extent they achieve the learning goals. Maybe we can give them a rubric or not, but then they evaluate their peers, and then they get the results of their peers' evaluation. And we can do all that with the virtual learning environment. We have also a grading interface where we can see students' grades, and they can see them too, depending whether we want them to see them or not. We have a discussion forums, so we can open a discussion forum and someone can open a discussion thread and people can, students and us, we can add answers to this thread. And we have a chat, we have small group areas where they can work in groups, and we have in-course private mail, we can communicate in this environment. So here you can see an example of my learning management system of a course that I'm teaching right now in the degree of pedagogy at the University of Barcelona. And you can see it's in Catalan, but you can see the title of the course. You can see the title here, and you can see the different icons in blue. So you can see that I uploaded a PDF there or two, and you can see another icon which is like the Earth. This is a link to an external website, and then you have in red you can see another icon. This is for a discussion forum where I can put the announcement for my class. And here you can see another part of my course where I have in pink, I have this assignment submission function. I have two different ones for two different exercises. And then you can see also in purple, you can see that I'm controlling students' attendance through this function. This environment is built in Moodle. Now, other additional features, well, there are plugins for social learning resources, such as video conferencing. So you can embed a video conference tool in the virtual learning environment. Let's say if it's Google Classroom, you can set up a Meet. If it's a Moodle, it's a bridge with Zoom, etc. There are also gamification features. So you can program your virtual learning environment in a way that when students deliver an assignment or when they complete a certain task, they get points or they get progress in their learning. There is a progress bar function that you can use also. And you can also award students digital badges with some of the learning management systems that I presented, such as ClassDojo and Moodle. You can award them digital badges. So if you are working with micro-credentials in your institution, maybe this would be interesting for you. And of course, in the context of a STEAME project, each teacher might want to think how these features can work for them, but we can give a badge or points to students when they go through this or that part of the project. Yeah, and then we have other features like a resource library. You can create like a book. You have e-signature capabilities, and some of these LMS softwares allow mobile use, and this is very useful if in your institution you're using mobile phones or tablets for learning. You might want to consider this when choosing which tool to use. Coming to the end of this presentation, just very briefly, I would like to talk about the design aspects that are also important in a virtual learning environment. Well, because obviously students will be working in an interface, not in a physical learning environment. So we need to take some aspects into consideration. The first would be graphic design. Then we need to consider instructional design, and then accessibility aspects. In terms of graphic designs, I would suggest two things. First, you need to adjust to students' characteristics. So when we are working with primary school students, it's not the same as when we are working with secondary school students or like lower high school and upper high school. You need to adjust the design, the very graphic design of the interface to their age and maybe to their context, to their interests. Also, as part of this of this point, you need to consider clarity and avoid information overload. This is very important. And you can do that by organizing the virtual learning environment by sections. You can put bigger icons, smaller icons. You can set all this up. Another piece of advice would be to use templates. So normally, the school would have a template for the virtual learning environments of all grades or all subjects. So use those to maintain consistency and to make sure students have a nice experience. In terms of instructional design, which is more into the pedagogical aspects of what students will be doing in these virtual learning environments, you need to consider, first of all, students' expertise in virtual learning environments and learning management systems. It's not the same if your students have already used these environments or if they haven't, because if they have not, you might need to make it more simple than if they have. You may not be able to use maybe the peer assessment activities that I told you about a few minutes ago, because they're just not used to them. Next, we need to consider students' digital competence, and this is how much they can use technologies, and also the availability of devices that they have, and the availability of the network, to ensure also equality when we are working with these with technologies in education. And then in terms of instructional design, we might want to check students' familiarity with the platform itself. Now, beyond their knowledge about virtual learning environments or digital competence, in this specific platform, have we worked with it together before or not? Because what we don't want, what we don't want is to add families a burden when our students have to work in a virtual learning environment at home and they don't have the knowledge to do so. Now, in terms of accessibility, accessible, what does it mean, right? It means that a person with disability is afforded the opportunity to acquire the same information and engage in the same interactions as a person without a disability in an equally effective manner. So whenever we are using technologies in our teaching, and in the case of virtual learning environments specifically, we want to keep this in mind, because accessibility benefits all students, not only those with some type of disability, it being auditory or visual or cognitive or motor, right? It benefits students also that have, like I said, technological limitations, such as a low bandwidth, old devices, or who are affected by limitations that come from the environment. Let's say, for example, environmental noise, brightness, all these things. So it's very important that we consider that, and that we guarantee the accessibility of the platform to include all our students. In order to do so, we can think of, having a very logical structure in our contents, make sure that it makes sense to our students, not just to us. Sometimes we think we put the files there, we think students will know which file they have to look for, but we named it in a way that doesn't make sense to them. And then, well, we need to take that into consideration. We need to use a neat interface, clear and concise information. We need to use the appropriate fonts and sufficient contrast. And very important, we need to use alternative text for images, right? So if there is an image of an apple, we need to make sure that this image has alternative text that says apple, so that the person with a visual impairment can use this software and they will read this image for them. It would say, here's an image with an apple, with a red apple. If we use videos, we need to use subtitles. And if we put documents, we want to use formatting options in a wise manner. So we don't want to use too many special fonts, those that are not compatible with browsers, with the main browsers. We don't want to overuse the underlining because then it looks like a link. Well, there is all sorts of advice. You can look into that in more depth. So when we are now moving on to maybe the more practical part of our webinar, I will give a brief introduction about specific aspects to take into account when using virtual learning environments in STEAME projects, in projects that involve several areas of the curriculum, let's say in a school. It is, in my opinion, it is very nice to use virtual learning environments for this type of project, because then we can, like I said, we can use technologies to mediate and enhance interactions between students and students, between students and teachers, and also, very importantly, between students and the content. So to show you this, I have selected an LNC plan, what we call an LNC plan in this STEAME project, which is basically a lesson plan. It's a lesson plan called Open Air Museum. So it's a lesson plan for students aged between 13 and 14 years old. And it is a sequence of 10 activities covering 2 areas of STEAME that you can see here marked with a cross. So it involves the T for technology and the A for arts. Therefore, the teachers that are involved in this project will be at least 2. This is the computer science teacher and the arts teacher. So like I said, this sequence is called Open Air Museum and is driven by a question, which is how does art reflect the community? And there is an additional question that is, how does technology connect to art? You can access this lesson plan in the link that you can see on the screen, but also in the website of the project that is publicly available. The sequence of this learning plan is more or less as follows. Students go and make photos, research and make photos of public art sites in their surroundings, in the surroundings of the school. Next, students place the information on Google Maps to create a walking tour of these public art sites, a walking tour of around their school or in their town. Next, the students write a proposal for the installation of an original artifact in the environment. Next, the students will design and build a model of this artifact, which could be maybe, for example, a sculpture. Then the students will prepare material for presenting this artifact to those that make decisions in the town, maybe the mayor or the culture department, something like that. Next and last, students will display the model of this artifact and discuss it in a public event. So in this project, having a virtual learning environment would be very nice because, in my opinion, because the teacher can share with the students the digital materials that are needed to do the activities. So maybe they can give them the links to information about these public sites. There can be also videos, and also the teacher could put there the worksheets. So in this sequence of activities that I explained, students have a worksheet. So this worksheet could be there in the learning environment, and it could be delivered through a task. Also, students can deliver their presentation material in the virtual learning environment, and also other groups of students could comment on those presentations, on those materials, using some rubrics that can be hosted also in this environment. Also, if we wanted to use some interactive activities, there are some quiz options in some of the LMSs that I presented. There is a quiz option, a survey, where the teacher in class could launch this survey and see the results in real time if students answer this survey in the virtual learning environment. So now the dilemma or the trilemma. This is normally virtual learning environments in a school would be organized in this way that you can see here. The English teacher has his class, and then the music teacher has his environment, and then math teacher has their own, right? Each teacher has their own virtual learning environment where they put their files and their activities and all that stuff. Well, the problem with STEAME projects is that they involve more than one teacher. So students might need to access different virtual learning environments when working on a single project. So in front of this situation, we have three alternatives. I call it three alternatives. First is to use a dedicated virtual learning environment just for the project. So we create a new virtual learning environment for the project, and all the teachers that take part in this project put there the materials, and every time students work on the project, they access this environment. This is one option, A. Option B is to use only the virtual learning environments from the subjects that take part in the project. So the math teacher puts his files, his activities there, and the science teacher, let's say, puts his activities in the other one. And when the students are working on the project but are doing something related to maths, they go to the maths learning environment. But if when they're doing something to the other, they go to the other, right? So this is option B. And option C is to use the virtual learning environments from all those subjects, like in option B, and having also a dedicated space, a dedicated virtual learning environment for the project, like in a transversal way. These are the three main ways that I see when we organize, when we are doing an interdisciplinary project in terms of virtual learning environment. So now each of them has their own implications. And I have written here some ideas to know what is best, A, B, or C, according to your context. So some things that you can consider is students' easy access to activities and materials. So what is best? Are your students happy moving from one to the other, or that they need to have their own space for the project? Consider this. Then you can consider the consistency with the teaching approach. Is it more teacher-led? Is it more autonomous? Are you teaching face-to-face? Are you doing it only online or in a blended way? Then you may think about that to decide between option A, B, or C. Another consideration would be teachers, right? From the teacher's point of view, easy access and follow-up of students' work for grading, for submission of assignments. Is it better to do it in the A, B, or C? And then other factors you might think about. So now I was thinking of doing a small group activity where you will be in split groups, and then you have to look at one lesson plan like the one I showed you, but it's a different one. And you will need to discuss which is the best option in this case, according to your experience or your school. Would it be better to have a single virtual learning environment for the project? Would it be better to just use the ones from math subject and art subject, if there are those involved, or if it's better to have a math subject and art subject, and then another one for the project, the option A, B, or C. And for that, I prepared material, and I will share the link to this material now. Here. In this material, you have the instructions for the activity, and if you want, you can spend 10 minutes in breakout rooms, and then we can come back to see how this activity was for you. And don't worry if you cannot finish, it's okay. Hi everyone. I was saying that we have just a few more minutes, unfortunately. But if there are people who would like to share the results of the activity or ask any question, please feel free to do so now.
You can also place your question in the chat if you like.
Hello, could I
Yes,
say something?
Caterina, yes.
Hello, Dr. Macridis, how are you? Yes, I loved the lesson plan that I skimmed through, and I believe that in my school, at least, what we do, we use this holistic, our whole school approach a lot during Erasmus projects, not so much for everyday teaching, unfortunately. What helps is, I believe, a combination of the three that you mentioned, that Dr. Dominguez mentioned at the end. And what we find very helpful is to use a Padlet. Each teacher works in his or her own learning LMS. And then we combine everything on a Padlet, and it's the project's Padlet in a way. And it has worked, not perfectly all the time, but it has worked well so far. So the outcome of the project is on one Padlet.
Yeah, I'm great to hear that. Padlet, yeah.
Yeah.
Good tool, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment.
Any other comment, question? Any other experiences?
Well, if I may jump in, hello, it's Nuno from Porto. I believe that having a specific course, let's say in Moodle for the project might be more appealing for the students, but requires more work from the teachers. That might be one issue to deal with. But yeah, as I see it, it would be nice to have this bucket as Caterina just mentioned for the project, and the main topics on each one of the courses independently. But then again, the problem is extra work for the teachers.
Yeah. But I'm glad that you understood the trilemma or dilemma that I'm posing.
I think it's the issue of whether you do it synchronous or asynchronous also. I mean, depending on which LMS to use, whether you can use it mainly asynchronous to make it more flexible sometimes. If there are no more questions, I'd like to thank Silvia for this webinar, which I have learned also from it, and we all have learned, and I think it's combining with all the modules that we would be offering through this platform under the STEAME Academy project. You would be able also in the near future to apply some of these learning modules and develop in cooperation with other teachers your learning and creativity plan and apply with students, etc. And you'll be able to take a path to certification as a STEAME teacher facilitator, and we will be able to support anyone who will be interested to become certified. So thank you everyone for participating. We're closing the webinar, and please follow us in the coming webinars in October and later on. Thank you very much. Thank you, Silvia, again, and keep safe.